You were somebody who worked at TikTok for a really long time, very instrumental in the growth of the company. Talk about, what people really need to know about TikTok itself and whether or not you think the ban is actually necessary.
Very loaded question, loaded topic. I'd love to start talking about just TikTok as a platform, one that has really kind of like taken over the zeitgeist of the entertainment industry, just the attention economy in the US itself. Are you familiar with how TikTok kind of got started?
I am not. No.
You ever heard of an app called Musically?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Musically came around in the early, 20 teens, kind of blew up. I think around like 2016, 2017, they had a couple 100 million users that were creating content. It was basically like lip syncing content. ByteDance, the company that owns TikTok, they bought Musically, they merged it with its own TikTok platform. They did kind of a rebrand. They released a bunch of features, and then, the 2020 period, the app really took off. I was super fortunate to start working there right in the beginning of 2020. And I have a story on why I went to work there. I have a brother that's 10 years younger than me. He is total Gen Z. And my entire life, it was always so hard for us to connect. 10 years is a really big age difference. I'm an immigrant, Eastern Europe, very like intense culture. Our dad died when I was 12, he was 2, right? So at that point, I actually had to turn into kind of like a father and a disciplinarian for him. So with that, it put a strain on our relationship. But this segues into the TikTok story. 2019, he knows I work in sales, I work in media, and he's like, hey, there's this app called TikTok. I think you should like look into it. You should download it. And I was like, nah, I'm good. I don't want to. Like, I'm already like sick of Instagram. I don't need another one, right? I considered it just like Instagram, and reluctantly, I downloaded it. We started watching videos together, like sharing videos, like shooting videos, just like messing around. A couple of weeks later, I look at him and I'm like, dude, I think I like you more. And I think it has something to do with this app. I immediately realized that like it has a psychological impact on us in the way that it's able to like bring people together to entertain folks. And with that, I was like, I think if brands figure out how to message here, like it's going to be a game changer. And immediately I was like, I have to go work there. I had no idea that it was going to turn into what it turned into. So, you can call that like right place, right time kind of thing. Dude, over the last few years, I mean, obviously it's turned into the biggest app in the world. And there's so much going on around not just the way that it impacts culture. In the early days, actually, you could tell that it was going to take off when things like cheese were selling out in stores because people were creating TikTok videos around spaghetti and cheese, and the cheese would literally sell out. And it was like, how the hell is like this happening? So, and now it's like, it's absolutely mainstream. You look at companies like YouTube, companies like Facebook and Instagram that have created literal clones of the product because they know it was that important for the short form landscape. So, I mean, it's one of the biggest platforms in the world. The ban stuff is a totally different topic, right? Obviously, it started. The original ban, ironically, was in 2020 by Donald Trump. He tried to ban it. Now, 5-6 years later, he's the one trying to save it and trying to make a deal for it. So a lot of irony and all of that. But you got to boil down, why do we think that conversation is happening, right? Is it about data security? Is it about the fact that a non-American platform is really taking over entertainment in the zeitgeist in the U.S.? That's up for debate. I think what the most important thing is that the folks in the U.S. and not just creators, but businesses, everyone, like they love the platform, and I'm confident that's going to be around for the long term.
What do you think made TikTok so successful? There's plenty of apps that come out like on a daily basis, a weekly basis, a monthly basis that never get off the ground or just fail super quickly. What was it about TikTok specifically that you think really made it pop off?
There's actually an amazing video on YouTube by the founder of Musically. His name's Alex Zhu. I think he still works for ByteDance and somewhere around there. But he talks about how to help or how to make a new platform really blow up, and he compares it to finding a new country. In the example, he's literally like, hey, imagine like you're looking at Europe, right? Europe in a few hundred years ago, it's already got millions of people. The economy's all established, and then you find this place called America. Like, how do you get folks to go there? You really have to show them that there's opportunity there. And with a lot of the early creators that showed up on TikTok, they blew up, right? A lot of them started making videos. They were merging their audiences over, and they got so much fame. A lot of them started getting their own like Netflix specials and deals in real Hollywood, and a lot of that kind of took off. So I think they did a really good job of enabling the early creator economy on the platform. That was one big one. I think another one is definitely the way the features of the platform and the way that it's built Like if you look at the algorithm, it's got one of the best algorithms ever. And, social used to be built around your following feed. It used to be built around how many followers you had, who was in your network, and now it's really moved to like an interest-based economy. The algorithm serves you based off of what you like to see, and the more time that you spend on it, the more you engage with it, the more that your feed is going to be curated to you. And I think now you got folks spending something like an hour and a half of time on the platform, and that is primarily due to like the power of the algorithm. I mean, let me ask you: do you use TikTok? Like, what's your obviously I know you're using all these as a podcast host, right, to help you distribute, capture eyeballs, all that. But as a consumer, like, what are you using?
I would say as a consumer, I use YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and like LinkedIn a little bit. I used TikTok for a while, and honestly, it was like I used it for a couple of reasons. It was mainly because I was like, all right, I kind of have to be on there because other creators in my industry are, and I got to upload clips, promote the podcast. And then I just found myself like doom scrolling a lot, and I found it just not being like kind of productive for what I wanted. But so I don't use it anymore. But and that's another question I wanted to kind of get into is like, a lot of what I talk about on the show is about mental health and like mindset and stuff. And I would say one of the critiques from people about TikTok is the attention that it takes from people, and that they say it may like manipulate people's attention spans because now they're getting used to just only paying attention for like 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, and that becomes like a habit. They just scroll, scroll, scroll. Like, what are your thoughts on all that, specifically regarding what you know about the app itself?
I mean, this is probably like a broader topic. This is in terms of like the attention economy in general. I think folks spend time in places where they get perceived value, whether that is in the form of entertainment or it's in the form of they're learning something. Some folks do enjoy sensationalized content, right? Like platforms like X and Twitter, they get a ton of time spent on it because there's some things going on there that folks get some dopamine from, So like these platforms are all designed to really give you what you're looking for, right? And like zoom out and think back before any of these platforms ever existed, right? Like where did folks get their entertainment? The newspaper, the radio, the TV, right? Like there's a huge evolution to all of this. Like the platforms that exist right now and the way the algorithms work, like I think they're probably taking some of the attention away from legacy TV, but I feel like you can, like, I'm to speak for myself. I go to these platforms and I get a ton of entertainment value. I also get a lot of motivation and inspiration. I could find content like yours. I could find old Kobe Bryant videos in terms of like what he's speaking on and how he was playing and stuff, and I get motivation from that. But at the same time, I'm able to control the way that I use these platforms, right? I think that's like an important aspect that people sometimes they overlook or don't necessarily focus on, is having the mindset to not let these things take over and consume your life, but to put limits on them and use them in a way that is beneficial to you.
And you're right. You have to take responsibility for what you're using these apps for, and there's always going to be like a double-edged sword with these things. And I think there is a lot of positives that exist from social media. That's just I just kind of brought that one thing up with the scrolling because that would be like, from a mental health perspective, that's like the main critique of social media, right? Is how it's like, specifically with like young adults, it's like really hacked their attention, impacted communication skills, relationships and stuff. But there is a lot of positive that comes from social media. I mean, obviously TikTok has been like looked at in a negative way recently because of the ban, etc. But I'd love for you to talk about like what are some of the positive things that often get overlooked with a lot of the negativity regarding like the app itself.
The app's always going to be in the public eye. Like the media really loves to dig into the conversation around TikTok because it has a much, closer tie to what's going on geopolitically across the world. I think like, I spent 5 years there. I had like one of the greatest experiences of my life. And I feel so fortunate that I was able to work there because I know how many millions of creators and businesses the platform really impacted. I choose to focus on the positives, and they have what they call their kind of STEM feed, right? So for folks that want to go there for science and math, like you can literally have a feed that gives you just that, and then your algorithm obviously tailors and curates to exactly what you like. So again, it's really going to be dependent on what you want. Like for me, my feed is all like sports and working out and all the things that you kind of talk about. It's really up to the person.
So there's no real like quote unquote like safety issues people should be worried about. I mean, I know one of the things that people were like afraid of is like, oh, where is my data going? Where's all this going? So you think, that's all just a big myth and that people should just continue to use the app, not have fear around it, and just, make the most of everything?
Well, I mean, I would look at what the people are saying when the app was going to get banned. Like you had millions of videos of people asking for it not to go anywhere and saying that they wanted it around. And I think, the number one place that folks went to when they found out TikTok might get banned was Red Note, which was another Chinese app. And like you could question, like, is that the folks sending a message saying that, we think that TikTok should be around? There's probably something to that. But I mean, look, I worked there for 5 years. I never saw anything that made me question anything other than everything that they were putting up and being extremely communicative about, and all the millions of dollars that they spent around data security and working with all the companies in the US. So, I had never had anything to question.
And I know it took you a lot to get there. You weren't born here. You faced a lot of adversity as a kid. You lost your father when you were 12, like you said. You had your brother. Your brother was only 2 years old. Talk about your journey. Like, what was childhood like? Where did you grow up? And then go in depth as possible about your story of coming to America.
I've recently, listened to a ton of your pods. I saw your pod with Danica. I heard a little bit about how you were talking about your relationship with, your mom. I have a very close tie to my mom and the journey that she's been on in this country. She brought me here when I was 4 years old. Me and her came here by ourselves without my dad. The country wouldn't let him in at that point. I was born in Montenegro, which is a part of Yugoslavia. It was in the middle of a war. Luckily, when my dad was a kid, he worked on ships and he got to kind of travel the world, and he just saw that there was so much opportunity in America. Thankfully, he made the decision to leave their families behind and bring me to the US. And my mom and I came here for 2 years at first before he was able to join us. A few years into our American dream, if you will, my dad, he worked overnight as a janitor in a building. He had an accident with a piece of machinery and he passed away. I was 12 years old. My brother was 2. My mom was 35 at that point. And when I look back on that, like, I'm 36 right now. I cannot imagine losing the love of your life, having 2 children, being in a country where you don't speak the language. You have basically a job that pays you nothing, right? And imagine having to navigate the rest of your lives in that situation. So my mom's my hero. When everywhere that I am right now would be nowhere without her. And then I've, of course, like the sacrifices of my father. So like that's first and foremost. So now like a big motivation of mine is I'm so grateful to my parents for giving me this opportunity that I try to do everything that I can to maximize my journey in America. Right. So always trying to give back and take care of my family, take care of my mother. But dude, I think a lot of that early days of the struggle that I went through is probably like where I am right now. Like I was like, hey, when you think about making it in America, right? Like you get a job, you try to save some money. I was like, how do I make more money? I was like, I have to get into sales. And ultimately that sales journey led me through my path to TikTok. I'm what they call a dreamer, a DACA recipient. You ever heard of the dreamers?
Yeah, totally.
Do you know why they're called dreamers outside of the obvious, like they have a dream, they came to America?
I don't. No.
Senator Dick Durbin released the DREAM Act in 2001, I believe. And the DREAM Act stood for Development, Relief, Education of Alien Minors. It basically means kids that were brought to the U.S. by no choice of their own, that have been here their entire lives. They are effectively should be considered Americans. They should be given a path to citizenship. There's a group of about 600,000 to 800,000 folks in this country that are considered dreamers. Their legal status here is called DACA. It's Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. I'm one of those dreamers. I've been here for 33 years. I still don't have citizenship. Most of those 33 years, I wasn't able to travel or leave the country. I was able to leave, but I wouldn't have been able to come back. Within the last couple of years, I've been able to travel for work purposes. But, through that, there's a lot of limitations that those dreamers have. And one of those things that they can't get is aid for school. So they can't get any federal aid. So you got to pay your own way to school. And what I had to do is take out private student loans at like 10% interest rates, right? So I left college with over $100,000 in student loans. And I was like, how the hell do I pay back $100,000? And how do I take care of my mom and my brother, right? And with that, it was like, I got to get into sales, because sales is literally your upside. What you bring home is due to your effort, the way that you're able to communicate and talk to people, the way you're able to work with a team. And I really saw that, my financial future would probably be better off if I went that route.
Man, thanks so much for sharing all that. You have an incredible story, and there's a lot to dive into. I want to get into like mindset, 'cause I put myself on like your shoes, and a lot of my audience, they people struggle at times with like feeling different or feeling like they have a chip on their shoulder or feeling like what's wrong with me? Why don't I have certain things that other people have? What was your mindset like as a kid, like as a teenager, as a young adult, like realizing like crap, I'm here. I'm not like these other kids. And I don't have the same benefits that these other kids have from living in this country, despite me being here with them. Like, what was that all like?
Yeah, man. So I mean, I think first thing I'll tell you is that I still struggle with this. I walk, I touch the soil in America every single day, and I think about the fact that this country does not want me here. And I've been here for 33 years, for 32, 33 of my 36 years, right? Growing up, I did not understand the magnitude of the situation that I was in. All I knew was that, my family, they were trying to kick my family out of this country for so long that the way that I coped with that was tried to live in the background. I tried to be silent. I tried to never tell folks about who I am, where I'm from, my culture, all that kind of stuff. I felt like an absolute outsider. And, I think I went through a period of, not being wanted, losing your father. Like, it'll put a lot of mental strain on you. Like, I spent a lot of my teens and even my early 20s. I just felt that I didn't know it at the time, but I was probably an angry kid. I probably wasn't as nice as I should have been. I wasn't as empathetic, right? And I really went through this kind of like transformational period in my late 20s where I looked at my life and I was like, why am I doing certain things that I don't like? Why am I not focusing more on work and my health and all of that kind of stuff? And I really went through this journey of self-discovery, and I started therapy, and and ironically, listen, I went to therapy because I was like, why do I keep dating people that aren't good for me? And I went through this entire discovery that once I started thinking about my dad dying, which I didn't do for 16 years after he died, I realized that there was all of this like built up trauma and turmoil that I just never dealt with. And when I did that, and when I really found my motivation to work out and use fitness and health as a daily regimen, literally my life changed. I stopped doing things that weren't good for me. I started focusing on myself and my work and my family. I felt that I was nicer, more empathetic. I literally went through this growth transformation, and I can always remember it was literally around the time I was 27, 28 years old. And now, I mean, it's just fueled the rest of my life. Now I wake up every day and I think about that person once in a while, but more so in the terms of like reflection and being grateful for having gone through that stuff, because now you look at the world so much more differently.
What's been the most like painful thing for you to overcome?
Whew. I remember opening the door. I had a doorbell ring. I'm 12 years old. I open the door. A police officer walks up the stairs of our apartment building, looks at me, and in my mind, I knew that he was about to give me the worst news that I would ever receive in my life. And I looked at him and I said, "Where's my dad? Is my dad all right?" And he looked at me and said, "No." And I'm 12 years old. So obviously, like, you don't know how to cope, you don't know how to process that. But my dad's death will always be, I'll tell you, it's a gift and a curse. It's the worst thing that has ever happened to me and my family. But through his existence, through his passing, I have more gratitude and motivation and a zest for life that I wake up every single day touching the ground with so much motivation to maximize this chance at life that he gave me, especially being in America.
Man, I'm sorry you had to go through all that, man. I'm sure it must have been incredibly like tough.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's still tough for sure.
What were some of the like things you had to like battle through that were caused by your dad dying so young?
Yeah, I mean, I touched on a little bit of just like how my mindset had to change as a 12-year-old. I never really got to be a kid, right? I come from a culture that says the oldest male is the man of the house. And I had all these people around me telling me that, hey, now it's time to grow up. You got to take care of your mom. You got to take care of your brother. And I think that's really what it gave me, this like intense mindset from a child. But it's like that. It's not the way for a 12-year-old to live. It's not the way for a 12-year-old to think. Right. And I think that's what led to some of the dark years, the anger that I probably felt, and the strain that it put on my relationship with my brother. Right. Going from his brother to his father at 12 years old. Like, you think that takes a toll on the way that you communicate with them and the expectations that you have for your role in a family, you know? So that's something that I'm repenting for now and trying to make sure that I'm the best brother I can be, and definitely not a disciplinarian. Now I'm a brother, you know?
Yeah. You talked about how still to this day, you really have a hard time with like your status here as a citizen, and that you don't really feel like you belong given the things that you don't have access to. How do you grapple with that? Like how do you live in America with that in the back of your mind? Like how does that impact how you do things day to day?
Man, this might sound weird. I feel so grateful and I feel so fortunate, even though like I'm in this situation where I'm not a citizen, I haven't been accepted, et cetera. Like I honestly feel like one of the lucky ones. There's like 800,000 or so folks like me, but I feel like I've been able to take a lot of the bad hands that have been thrown my way and to kind of turn them into a positive and to really leverage just my work ethic and the opportunity that exists here to get ahead, right? And some of that is, you know, getting into sales and working in media and landing at jobs like TikTok, right? Like I'm taking advantage of the situation that's in front of me. But now it's like I really hate public speaking and putting my story out there and all this stuff because it's not fun. It's painful. You got to think about things that you went through that were some of the worst things that you ever had to deal with. But at times I'm like, you know, if there's another dreamer out there that maybe maybe they haven't found a job, maybe they have no savings, like they might be in such a worse off situation that if they can get some form of inspiration or motivation or just understanding that you know, there's got to be optimistic in this light at the end of the tunnel, like that's really what I'm trying to bring out there now.
And so where do you go from here? Like as a dreamer, like what is your hope for the next like 3 to 5 years? Like what are you hoping you'll get versus what you have now?
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of this is really about just public perception and trying to get as many, you know, advocates for us to speak on our behalf as we possibly can. I think the country is really accepting of dreamers, and you know, you know, when folks are polled and surveyed, like they don't think dreamers should go anywhere, but Congress has yet to act and to make DACA a permanent pathway to citizenship for all these folks that have been here their entire lives. And just to give you like some of the stats, like over 90% of dreamers are employed. They've finished school in the US, right? They all started school there. Most of them have been here for almost 30 years, these 800,000 people. You know, so the fact that, you know, they've been here their entire lives and still are not viewed as Americans is, I think, is just wrong. It's not a way to give back to folks that have given their entire lives to this country, that pay taxes, that are contributing members of society. And right now, we all really live on a 2-year basis. Every 2 years, we have to renew and ask for permission to stay in the country. And DACA it's been fought in court for years now. There's a chance that it might end. And if it ends and they don't bring anything new about these 800,000 people, literally might have to leave the country. You know, so the saddest part of all of this is that these folks, you think like most people that are born here, you get to plan the rest of your life. Like you get to think in 5 years, the city I'm going to be living in, this is what I'm going to be doing. This is what my family situation is going to be. They get to think of 2 years, and then they have to submit this application, and there's a chance that it gets denied, or there's a chance that the program goes away, and they have to identify, where in the world do I go? Because the country that I was born in is not my home. I don't have family there. There's nothing there for me, right? So how am I not allowed to stay in the place that I've spent my entire life?
We talk a lot on the show about focusing on what you can control in the midst of adversity, in the midst of uncertainty, fear. Can't imagine how much uncertainty and fear you must, have on a day-to-day basis, on a weekly basis, given what you just mentioned. How do you harness all of that to not let it control the way you live your life?
It's a lot different now than it used to be when I was, even 10 years ago, you're in a different financial situation. You don't have as much experience, right? Then the anxiety for me was, through the roof. I think I've really worked hard to build, a nest egg for myself to be able to take care of myself and my family. And so now, I feel all right in knowing that I'm focusing on the day to day. I'm focusing on my job, my team, trying to make an impact. And then I try to just remain optimistic that, common sense will prevail and the folks will take care of the nearly 1,000 people that have been in this country forever and whose earliest memories are saying the Pledge of Allegiance in elementary school.
And so taking this a step further, like what are some of the things that you do on a regular basis that help keep you like dialed in as far as your mental state of mind? So this stuff doesn't get to you as much. So that when you see a news story, you see something on social media, like what's your routine like?
I woke up this morning and, when you go through do I have time to work out today? When am I going to work out? Do I skip it today? I was like, I'm talking to Doug. I was like, I have to go get my workout in. I have a gym downstairs in my building, and I try to get a workout in 5-6 days a week, 3-4 days of weight training. I try to get some running in. I really feel like health and fitness and taking care of yourself, it makes you think better. It's such a catalyst to everything else in your life. Like if you take care of yourself first, you're going to be able to take care of your job. You're going to be able to take care of your team and everything. So I think health is a really big one. I grew up playing basketball. I've got all these basketball pictures behind me. I still try to get some shots up when I can. Now, anytime I feel anything in my body, I'm like, all right, I'm done, because I am so scared of tearing my Achilles, and I keep hearing stories of folks where it happens all the time. But I think health and fitness is a big one for me.
Yeah. And what about like the people you spend time with? Like I know you and I were connected through a mutual friend of ours, JT, who's such a great dude. Like how has like your status here as a citizen, like how does that play out in like your friendships with people who are actual US citizens?
Man, I went most of my life with none of my friends even knowing my situation, because one, it was too painful to talk about. Two, I felt judged. Now I definitely, my friends know my story. I'm trying to generate as much awareness for the dreamers that are in America as I can, So it's a topic of conversation all the time. Obviously, we just went through an election. Of course, folks are thinking about, how do you feel about this? Like there's a chance DACA and dreamers might go away. They might have to go somewhere else. So it's always a topic of discussion. But I think what I'm so grateful for is the support that I have from my community and my friends, and even all the employers that I've worked for, that have given me lawyers and helped me work with the government to do things like travel.
I mean, did you ever struggle with like envy with some of your friends? Like if you honestly were to ask yourself if you like just subconsciously struggle with envy, even not, unintentionally, did you?
Yeah, when I was a teen, dude, I went through some dark years. I'm sure I was envious of folks that got to do things. Um, I don't know. More than envy, it was probably a lot of sadness, man. Because one thing that a lot of dreamers go through is like all of those vacations that you take with your friends when they're like, "Hey, let's go to Mexico, let's go here, let's go there." Like you have to make up stories for why you can't go, because to them it doesn't make sense for you to say, I wasn't born here. I don't have a passport. I don't have a green card. I can't travel. You know what I mean? So the fact that you had to lie about your existence and miss all of those memories when you were younger, like that hurt the most.
Yeah, I bet, man. I can't imagine. Like I just put myself in your shoes and it's like, gosh, that must have been so tough. Would you ever like be in like with like a group of people and just, you said you were like kind of you had like this chip on your shoulder, pretty angry at times, and being like, man, like these people are just so lucky.
Dude, to be honest, I think we're all lucky, man. I think, like, regardless of the situation you're in, there's just so much opportunity here that I think if you have the right mindset, if you're able to deal with some tough and figure out what is my best possible solution to get through this, like, we are all so fortunate. Like, any one of us could have been born anywhere in the world and not have nearly what we have right now, So I really try not to look at it in terms of like what are folks around me doing. I just try to look at tunnel vision. What opportunity and possibility do I have in front of me? And my life really turned around after I went through the therapy session in my 20s.
You talked about your dad, dying and the silver lining, and that was it, like, motivated you to like live your life a certain way. And that I would imagine a lot of that negative emotion, that anger and that sadness, like fueled you, right, to become successful in what you're doing. Like talk about how like the adversity in your life, feeling like you were kind of less than here in America. How did you turn that negative into a positive to be able to like fuel yourself into working for like, one of the biggest companies in the world?
Ultimately, if you really think about it, like my dad left his family, moved to a country, and ended up dying in a tragic accident for me to have this opportunity. Like, in a sense, my dad sacrificed his life, literally his life, so that I could have this chance. So for me, like, and I actually talk about this at work sometimes, working in corporate America can be tough. There's a lot of pressure. There are goals, all of that. Like, life throws more at you than any company, any relationship, anything ever will, right? And if you can play the hand you're dealt in a way that allows you to be a contributing member of society and focus on your family and get through some of that, like no company, no one will be able to throw anything at you that you can't tackle. It's really how I look at it. And I don't know if you call it perseverance, a growth mindset. I'm not sure, but I truly feel that way.
Yeah, I think the people who go through hard times in their life and they're able to come out on the other side of that, they have the good fortune to like have that mindset shift and say, yeah, you know what, like can't control these unfortunate situations that I've been put in, but I got to figure out a way to like not be in the situation anymore and then get out of that. I feel like there's this like unbreakable mindset that comes with that where you just feel that no matter how far your back is against the wall, you just know you'll get through it. I mean, do you have that kind of mindset where you know you'll get through it?
I have so much confidence that due to my work ethic and what I'm willing to, the pain that I'm willing to endure and fight through, like I really think I can get through anything. Of course, like life is going to throw some crazy at you and I already know more of it is going to come, but I really do have that confidence in myself. But let me ask you something. You've been through so much. You've changed your mindset. Like you're night and day person now versus who you were before. Like, how do you hold on to that? And how do you like sharpen your sword? How do you continue refining that mindset?
I think it's just by just focusing on getting like better each and every day. I think so many people think they're gonna overhaul their mindset overnight. And I think what happens is when people try to do that, they fail because they don't work on like the necessary things in between. Like for me, when I was in jail, I had to focus on taking incremental steps towards the person I wanted to become. And so when I did that, I built this nice solid foundation of this new version of myself that was so strong because it took a long time to get to that point. Like I'm still learning today, right? It's like I think that where you get to in life is because of a series of small wins and like compounded interest, if you will, similar to like investing. And the reason I think that is because every phase of your life when you're changing leads to something else. Like for me, got out of jail, I was like, oh crap. Like I'm like, man, this is amazing. Like I never thought I could like live life without doing drugs. Confidence boost. Where does that lead? It's like, okay, now I have the confidence to not do drugs. Let's like be confident in like, working out. And then you work out and I lose a bunch of weight. And then I become a trainer. It's like, wow, I never thought I'd become a trainer. Then I have success with that. And you see it just, you just keep climbing the ladder. And then you climb it so high sometimes that you're like, you don't even remember who that old version was. Right. And I think when you do it that way, instead of like trying to change it overnight, I think it's way more sustainable because you put the reps in. You know what I mean? Like going from a convicted felon in jail to becoming like a successful podcaster has taken what, like 15 years. It's not like I went from 0 to 100. I think a lot of people miss the in between. I know it's like a roundabout way of like answering your question, but that's how, like, the reason that I'm able to keep the sword pretty sharp is because I just embrace the journey and sharpen that sword along the way. I wasn't like, all right, I didn't just take out this dull knife and like, all right, I need to sharpen it tomorrow so that I can be like on top of my game. But if you're like asking me now, like, okay, what do you do to maintain, your frame of mind? I mean, it's definitely obviously fitness and working out is important. Having a sense of meaning and purpose, doing stuff like this, having conversations like you, paying it forward on the podcast, making sure I'm spending time with the right people, making sure that like I'm optimizing my health and wellness, my relationships, all that stuff. I think when I do those things, I just think that slowly over time, that sword, it just keeps getting sharper. And I think the last thing I'll say is when you do it like that and you focus on the slow burn, you don't have to sharpen the sword as much.
Sharpens itself.
It sharpens itself. And that's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, 100%. And I like more gratitude in that process though, because you're unintentionally learning to love the journey. It was hard to do the first push-up. The more you do the push-ups, you start to like doing the push-ups. And I hope folks that are like struggling and trying to figure out the situation that's going to help them get to that point where they find that sword that they can start sharpening, man, it's just such a journey, and it's such a rewarding journey because it literally you change as a person. Your entire life changes, the trajectory of life, the way that you think. Like every single thing is night and day from what you used to be.
Yeah, and it's like one of those things that's tough, right? I think like embracing the journey and snapping yourself out of the victim mindset is very tough, especially when life throws you unfortunate circumstances that you have no control over, right? Because then it becomes a story you tell people, and then what's the first thing that happens? Then, in a way, I think subconsciously you erase responsibility for your actions moving forward, so you can kind of behave in a way that might be negative, and then you can always point back to the situation. And that's the reason why you're behaving like that, right? Like, I mean, using you as an example, and again, your situation was way worse than mine and a lot of people that I know. But I'm just, from hearing you talk, you said you were an angry kid, had this chip on your shoulder because of the situation that happened to you, right? And you didn't really learn that lesson until, 15 years later or whatever. And so then what also happens is, as you start talking about it, there's commodity in that story. And now you have people wanting to help you out, people wanting to save you, rescue you because they feel sorry for you. And that becomes kind of addicting. You're like, oh, like, amazing. I can take this negative situation in my life. I can behave how I want forever, essentially, if you let it be that way. And I can have some help along the way. And then I think what ends up happening is people will end up having this rude awakening where they're like, wow, I wasted away so much time and energy being mad and angry at that thing instead of processing it in whatever way is healthy for that person, and then figuring out how they're going to make their situation better. Because at the end of the day, like listening to you and others who have shared amazing stories like this, people want the same thing. They want to be accepted. They want to be loved. They want to feel like they're safe and they're going to be okay, right? And the reality is, during situations like that, people sometimes do the opposite and they push themselves further away from being able to get the very thing that they want, which is to be happy, safe, loved, accepted, etc.
And then gravitate towards some of the darker things and the dopamine and the way that mask certain feelings that you might need to go through to power through that storm to get through the other side.
And I have total compassion for people in your situation and others, right? I mean, 'cause it's like, man, losing your dad at 12, coming to America at 4, like not knowing like if you're going to be able to stay here, like that must be incredibly terrifying, right? And then I also know, like getting to know you, that I mean, obviously you're successful now, but you wanted to be successful and happy and all this stuff. And I think what people sometimes miss is going down the dark path of addiction, anger, mental health stuff that, based on the way they behave, like is not going to help you get what you want. It's just going to essentially like push you far away from being able to achieve like happiness, security, etc.
Right. No, yeah, you got to go through the dark times. It helps you build an intensity, a thick skin. Like those memories don't go away. Like you think about them all the time, but now they're essentially kind of like your armor. I hear every once in a while for folks that meet me for the first time that they might think I'm intense or whatnot, and I try to work on my resting face and how much I smile, all that stuff, but that intensity comes from the 12-year-old, like all the that I had to deal with at 12. And I actually feel like that intensity is kind of a fuel to help me continue driving and be successful and make an impact for those around me. While it sucked going through, I'm so grateful for the journey.
What advice do you have for somebody that is like in the thick of something tough? They've gone through some sort of hardship. They don't know what's going to happen in the future and they're just feeling kind of stuck. Like, how do you help them reframe their mindset to be optimistic moving forward?
Yeah. I mean, I think the first thing you kind of have to do is sit with the negative thoughts that you have. And whether that's through journaling or through therapy or however you need to process and communicate what's going on internally, just to be aware and to say that, hey, these are the things that I'm feeling and seeing and thinking. Like you have to go through that part, because if you don't, you're kind of just like sweeping it under the rug and trying to hide it, and you're going to go years. And I know personally, like I didn't think about my dad dying for close to 20 years, right? And there's so much darkness in that. And then look, I think you got to find the things that are healthy for you, whether that is working out, whether it's through your job, the things that help you feel fulfilled, help you feel like you're making progress. Those are things that you'll start seeing wins. And to your point, there's compound interest on top of that. And the more you fight through those and you feel that positive dopamine and the wins, like you start to build more confidence, you start to feel, better about your relationships, you start to make an impact on those around you. I can't remember what book it was, but it's a saying that I try to follow, and it's like, heal yourself, heal the world. And heal your world is like, obviously none of us are going to be saving the world here, but how I think of it is in, more of your community, right? If you really focus on making yourself a better person, think about the incremental impact that you're going to have to your brother, your sister, your parents, right? If you can try to get them to make a couple percentage points difference, like it just continues to spread. And if you can infiltrate your community for the better, I think that is where the real impact comes from.
You've been on this super long journey of going where you were as a kid to where you are now. I think about like people, when they're looking to transform themselves in the first like year specifically is probably the most brutal, right? Because you're having to shed a lot of emotions, a lot of masks are coming off, a lot of pain's going away. And sometimes people can become impatient because they're like, you know what, like when am I going to get my break in life? Like when is this pain going to stop? What was that like for you? Like early stages of transforming yourself, like your mindset in your late 20s?
When I ultimately realized why I thought I had, the anger, the negative thoughts, or putting myself in situations that weren't good for me, when I identified that it was because I didn't think about my dad dying for 16, 17, 18 years, I literally had to sit there and talk to my mom to relive the day that he died, to think about how I felt as a child, to look at, things like his autopsy papers and all of this kind of stuff, to literally process what I hadn't processed my entire life. And I mean, you can just imagine how heavy moments like that are. And that's not a one day thing. That's a multi-year process and thinking through a lot of that stuff. But that's, to my earlier point, like you have to go through those dark days. So you'll never really get to the true light at the end of the tunnel. And I'm not there, that you're always on that journey. But if you're not sitting through those dark times, those really, really hard times, it's going to be a longer process for you.
And speaking of hard times and like feeling the feelings, like you said, you still feel like the emotion of what it was like to lose your father and telling that story. Can you pinpoint a moment when your frustrations about yourself and your life as an adult like peaked? Like what was going on in your life, how you were behaving, and then like what ultimately was the first step in you getting out of that?
I mean, to be honest, I think it had a lot to do with the way that I viewed myself, from just how good I thought I looked. I was really overweight when I was younger. I kept spiking in my weight. At one point, I was like 220 pounds, and I'm 5'11", and I was just like, I need to get my in gear. And like you go out, you're drinking, you're eating, like I'm living, these unhealthy lifestyles. And I think that was a big catalyst. And then when I evaluated my life in terms of like, what do I want to do more? How do I focus more on work? Like that was that period where I sat down and just really reflected on, what does my life look like? And what do I actually want my life to look like? And then how do I put the steps to go get over there? And that's what led me to that journey. But I mean, it's weight, man. I think I had a big, just a problem with the way that I looked at it. I didn't feel confident. And I think finding the gym and finding those behaviors that led me down that positive path, and seeing the progress and seeing myself, drop weight and buy a different belt, all that stuff really makes you feel better.
What's the path been like of finding meaning and purpose? Like I know a big part of your purpose now is obviously staying here in the US, but like how do you get past that? I'm sure can be so overwhelming to like find like real meaning in what you do for work.
I've been fortunate to work for, some of the biggest platforms and social companies. I think I get a lot of fulfillment and driving impact. And I actually view, I work in sales. I work for advertisement based companies. And I view that as like a competitive sport. Like we have these amazing platforms, and there's such a big advertisement industry that I'm building teams, I'm driving partnerships. I view it as, it's really fulfilling to me because it takes me back to playing basketball in college and stuff. I get to do it at this level. And I'm just going back to really trying to drive as much value as I can and impact on those folks around me.
And when it comes to like healing, like what have been some of the things that have really helped you heal? I mean, you mentioned therapy. Like what was that process like?
Yeah, I would encourage. Yeah, I still talk to a lot of folks who are like that. I've never gone to therapy. Everyone should talk to a therapist. It's just it really helps you getting things out. Really helps you think about what you're going through and how to navigate some of that. Therapy and fitness was the combo for me that changed it all. Again, in my early days, I didn't know that that's what I needed. I tried it. It worked for me. I think it makes sense for a lot of folks.
A lot of the stuff that you had to unpack was the biggest stuff, like coming to terms with losing your father and the anger around that. Was that the biggest thing?
Losing my father, not being accepted in America. Those are probably the combo of those two. Still to this day, I don't feel accepted. I feel like I have a future that I'm fighting for. I don't know if I'm going to be able to stay in this country. I might have to go find a new country to live in. And I don't know any other country besides America. So to me, it just seems like why would we not want folks who are contributing members of society and who love this country and who contribute to continue staying here? It just doesn't make sense.
I think I've already asked this question in a different way, but it just popped up like based on what you just said. I mean, I know you have a lot of gratitude for the US and what you've been able to do here. You've mentioned that. And that like everybody has hardship. We've talked about that. But how do you not let like the anger that I can kind of tell you still have about your situation get in the way of like you being productive and not hating the country, you know? Like how do you not let what you just said like allow you to like hate America?
I don't think it's anger. I think it's intensity. And I think it's intensity that you channel and release in other areas. So it's like when someone tells you that you can't do something, when someone tells you that you're not good enough, you internalize that and you let that frustration out in the form of motivation. And the way that I do that is by trying to be as impactful and productive as I can in the workplace. And that is me saying that I still am able to take advantage of the opportunity that I have here and turn that frustration into something that is highly productive. And I really think that's been a catalyst for how I've gotten here thus far.
And what about your relationship with your younger brother? What's that like now?
It's awesome, man. It gets better and better every day. Going back to the TikTok story, I'm so grateful. Like my number one thing of the entire TikTok experience is that it brought me closer to my brother, and I'm so happy about that. You know, he's going through his own journey. He's 10 years younger than me, you know, so he's early in his career. He's trying to figure out what he wants to do, but I'm no longer his father, pseudo father, right? I'm his brother, and I'm there for guidance and support and empathy, and everything about our relationship is different. But a lot of that just started intrinsically. The way that I communicate with him is not from a place of I'm here to discipline you. It's from a place of I'm here to listen and learn and provide any guidance that I can so that you can figure out your journey on your own.
Anything else that you would like to add that we haven't covered regarding your story, TikTok, what you're doing now that you think the audience will get a lot of value from?
Yeah, man. So I'm still working in the social space. I'm working for Discord now. Joined Discord a couple months ago to help build out their advertising offering and work with a lot of the partners. I'm still in the entertainment space, working with all the movie studios and streamers, and I just get so much joy out of that and all of our partnerships. But no, I just want to thank you for having me, man, for giving me the space to tell you a little bit about my story, but also really shed light on the issue that dreamers and DACA recipients are all still facing. You know, I truly, really do think that I'm one of the lucky ones. I've been able to turn, you know, some hardships into motivation that's allowed me to become somewhat successful at where I am and nowhere near where I want to go, you know, but there's a lot of folks that I know are in a much rougher situation and they've been here their entire lives and they deserve to be here. So thank you for allowing me to share that story.
You got it, man. It's a great combo, and I think the audience is going to be inspired. So thank you so much.
Cool, man. I appreciate it.